You're watching the FileMaker News Network. Bringing you the latest in critical FileMaker news, as well as trivial gossip. Miles Debsky with Internet Weather. And our field reporter, Jacob Taylor. Anchored by our award-winning team of Margaret, Haley, Jeremy, and David. You're watching FileMaker TV.
All right, awesome. Richard Carlton here. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker training. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker training. Every day at 1 o'clock Pacific time, we are doing training on FileMaker topics. The topics range from kind of beginner topics, predominantly a lot of more intermediate to advanced topics. Today is kind of exciting. Tomorrow's 2 days of rather high levels of excitement. There's a new release of the FileMaker Platform out, which will be followed by an update from the Claris Platform. So I'll address that shortly. I want to welcome Jacob Taylor today. Mr. Jacob Taylor, are you there? Are you ready to go?
I am. Welcome.
Awesome. Yeah. So we are broadcasting. For those of you wondering about this, let me before we dive into this, let me just do the upfront cursory information. So you are watching FM TV. I'm not sure what the hell we call it after we quit calling it FileMaker TV. We're here every day. If you want to support the channel, this material content is totally free for you. We recommend you purchase one of our training bundles. This is on-demand recordings. It's about 100 hours of training. It's the biggest training collection in the community by far. And so if you want the definitive source on training material, this is where you're going to get it. Support the channel, buy one of these bundles. It's greatly appreciated. Helps us keep the lights on. So let me kill that. All right, so I'm going to flip forward on our slideshow. I want to point out, I've actually never met this guy, right? But there's this guy called Doug Wallace or Douglas Wallace. I'm not sure if you call him Doug, does he get offended? Some people are like that. Douglas is what his mother called him.
Well, his name is Doug in our Twitch, so I assume he goes by Doug.
Ah, okay, yeah. So I've never met this guy. I guess he's a cool dude. I have no idea. Maybe someday I'll actually talk to him. But he is one of the product managers at Claris. He put together the basis of this slideshow. I saw this slideshow, bits and pieces of it on Monday. I begged and pleaded with Claris to get a copy. I've got a copy, and I've juiced it up, made it like Richard certified, right? So it has all the extra material in it. Also, so these are all the bits and pieces that we're bringing together in one spot today. Claris has a forthcoming blog on transactions that'll be out. We'll kind of talk about that tomorrow some more, right? But transactions, we're going to cover them lightly today because we want to cover the rest of the updates overall. I want to point out Wim DeCourt, nice guy at Soliant. Soliant's a very different kind of company than my company. However, Wim over there is a technical genius, reminds me a lot of Jacob Taylor, vice versa. He wrote a really nice blog. So Margaret's going to post these links for everyone here up in Twitch, YouTube, and Discord so you can see these links. There's also, I want to point out some help documents that are put together by Claris, and we'll reference those as we go too. It's funny, but if you're in FileMaker Pro or Claris Pro and you go up to help at the top, the documentation there's pretty good. In fact, as a side note, there's a lot of little notes on various topics at the bottom. So you read something about like open transaction script step, and it'll tell you how it works. And at the bottom, there'll be some like little notes like warning, if you're left-footed and right-handed and you drive 8 miles to work, this might not work on Windows, right? There'll be some sort of like note in there. Those notes have a way of coming back to the certification test. So whenever you read Claris help documents, make sure you read the notes at the bottom. That's where they generate a lot of their questions from the certification test. So moving along, let's cover a couple like really obvious low-hanging fruit issues here. First off, there are 2 platforms that Claris is supporting right now. We've been talking about this at great length. It's really important that I wanted to mention this. This was brought to my attention by someone at Claris, and I was waiting to see if it actually happened, and it did. Claris did launch these updates first and foremost for the FileMaker platform. They are not yet available for the Claris platform. So Claris is continuing to demonstrate their commitment as we move from a platform that's been established for a long time. Everyone pretty much uses it, the FileMaker platform. As we look at migrating and moving to the Claris platform, everyone was concerned that, well, Claris is not going to support the old platform. Well, they still supporting it even to the to a point where they're releasing the updates first for the older platform, if that makes sense. So as of this time, my company's not using the new platform, but in January and various dates thereafter, there's supposed to be updates that come out, and Claris will be chipping away at these limitations, and we will continue to evaluate it, because eventually everyone will more or less move to the Claris platform, but it might take years for this to happen. I don't know how long it'll take, but it's not going to be a 12-month process. It'll be longer than that. So I just wanted to point this out, that the updates are available for the FileMaker platform right now. They're not available for the Claris platform. So I salute and hats off for demonstrating that commitment. So I want to, before I dive into this real deep, what I want to do is I want to remind everyone of something. If you're an advanced developer, you already know about this. I'm going to draw this, I'm a diagram. This is an animation we have in some of our training. What I want to point out is this is a Claris server, FileMaker server, and these are users. Notice the data goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. One of the first things that in a release that I saw that was really helpful, and I know I'm a little slicing me here, but I just wanted to point this out here real quick. I can grab this and hold it right here, is that when you open up a FileMaker solution or a Claris solution, what ends up happening, these bits of data come down to the clients, and bits of data are cached and saved, like, for example, layout information, some of the record information. Claris Corporation, the engineering teams there since FileMaker 15 or 16 started caching the data, which means that if you quit FileMaker, a lot of the data is saved in repository on the hard drive of the computer, on the flash memory of an iOS device, etc. That way, when it opens, it doesn't have to send you everything. It only sends you the pieces that you need. It allows you to open something as three times as fast in a lot of situations. There are some situations we've been running into over the last year or two where you can have a really big database. Instead of the cache helping you load faster, it causes things to load slower. And so the idea is that Claris, I've been making requests about this, and they actually listened on this, and I was pretty happy about this. Your users are going to come to you, and they're going to say something like, the internet's full. I always love that one. The internet's full. When I have someone come to me and says the internet's full, I generally know that they're from the marketing department, right? Or they'll say FileMaker's slow, and you'll tell them quit downloading movies or whatever they're doing, and they say we're not downloading movies, and you check their network with a little latency, and their network is fine, and the FileMaker server is fine, but the symptom is that your client, as you tell it to open a solution, goes very, very slowly. It takes minutes, so long that you think it's crashing, you force quit the computer or you walk off or something. And so this is this first bug fix in 19.6 is a little bit of fire suppression. What it is that somehow, some way, there's a bug in the caching system in the product. Claris gave us a button. In my mind, this is one of the bigger features of this release, is a button right down here. I can't, about once a week, each of my engineers, and I got like 25 engineers, whatever it is, they will be on a phone call with a customer, and the customer will describe this problem to them. It's a common problem, especially if they have a multi-gigabyte database with data. And what happens is that somewhere between the server and the client, as you open it up, it's going to compare the cache to make sure the cache is up to date. Well, something in there is amiss. I don't know what it is. Claris, I don't think they know what it is necessarily. But what we said is that as a stopgap fix, we want to blow out the cache. So Claris put this button in the preferences. So you go up under File, or up under File or FileMaker down to Preferences, and this button right here, you just press it, it closes out all the files, and it zeroes out the cache. It resolves the problem, or at least kind of temporarily erases the problem for the time being, and it allows the solution to open like it's the first time, and it loads down much faster. It fixes this issue. And so without this, you have to do a bunch of command line shenanigans with the customer. It's like the person who said, hey, the internet's full, right? And you're like, okay, how am I going to explain to this person, like, dude, you have to do the command line. And when you tell them that, then they promptly say, oh, I need a new consultant, you're fired. It's kind of the sequence of conversation there. People think I'm kidding. I'm being serious. Tell a marketing person to command line, you might be looking for a new job, okay? So what they did is they built this button here, and it blows out, resets it. As dumb as this is a major help in the platform, because the caching and the performance are great. We need the caching, the performance improvement, but somewhere in there, this is some mayhem that's going on. This allows you to reset it. For me, I do this about once a week on my one, because I have some really big databases that we use to manage the companies. So that one button is one of my favorite buttons in there just because it allows me to tell my customer, press this button and you'll be good. But there's some other more specific features in the product, one of which is this idea of transactions. If I asked you, Mr. Taylor, how to explain transactions, what would you say? How would you explain that?
I would tell you that what it lets you do is group up a lot of changes together,
Okay.
and then if everything is successful, put them into the database at the same time. And so this can be, it isn't, oh, I go make a record over here, I set a couple fields, and then, you run your commit script step or something like that. This can be a process that runs through the database and makes a potentially substantial number of changes. And then at the end, you can do some pre-flight checks and boom, slam it all in at the same time.
So as a practical example, we're going to demonstrate this kind of thing tomorrow. This is an invoice, right? We're in FM Starting Point. This is the free CRM that we have that we give away. It's unlocked. It's downloaded a lot, right? So if I tell it to create a new record, say you're in here, you put the customer in here and you start adding line items and you start doing this and you do that, you do this, you do that. And the idea is that my wife, who did access development years ago, and now she doesn't do this anymore, but she does a lot of finance stuff with RCC. I go, well, what if you were sitting at your computer, putting in this information and you're halfway through with this, doing this invoice, and you put the people in here and all this kind of stuff. And then halfway through the invoice, you die of a heart attack, right? Or more commonly, your computer crashes, the internet goes out. FileMaker is going to save wherever it was at the time. You have a half completed invoice. If you're in an organization that doesn't have any sort of flexibility in dealing with half completed anythings, then what you would do is you would roll all these items into a single transaction. It's a process where FileMaker is not going to save it to the server until you say it's done, and then it's going to take all these edits, the creation of the invoice, the adding of this person, all these line items, to when you're completely done, rolls it up into a big package and shoots it to a server as one blob. And so that block of information hits the server and is saved on one pass. And if it crashes or something happens, either it's all or nothing. You don't get incomplete processes is the idea. And so it's not uncommon for a server to crash, or someone's typing in the laptop going down the road and they're 5G in their car and whatever, and then they pass out of range of cell coverage and it dies right there. Well, that could be an incomplete transaction. If you're using transactions, it would not give you half an invoice, it would give you no invoice. And you're like, well, I have to do all that work all over again. Well, it's up to you. You have a choice in FileMaker. You can do half the work and have it be partially done and partially saved and come back later. But if you forget, then maybe the company sees that, your company thinks that's a complete invoice. No bueno. So we're going to dive into this at much more depth tomorrow and demonstrate it and show it to you. But I just wanted to point this out. It's an important feature. It helps Claris become more of a professional, modern application, right? I mean, this is not really low code. This is really a pro code kind of thing, right? Low code people have no idea what a transaction is, right? So this is kind of a pro code capability, but there's some new script steps. It works pretty well. So we're looking forward to demonstrating that in earnest tomorrow. There's a number of server features. Jacob, you want to talk about these a little bit?
Sure. So a couple of it's the ones that are on the screen here, but a couple things to call out here. You can do a clone only backup. So as it stands, previous to 19.6's release, there was an option in a backup schedule to have a clone, and that does what it sounds like, which is during the backup process, it takes a clone of the file. It puts those clones right next to the backup that you were making anyway. That's how it works pre-19.6. As of 19.6, we can now create, if you want to think about it this way, a custom or a special backup schedule that only clones. It doesn't take the whole copy of the database. You don't end up with, a record full copy and a record empty copy of the clone itself. It's just a clone. So if you need to, for example, there's certain types of auditing or structural analysis you might want to do. If you just want to set stuff aside because, I don't know, you're messing with, you're playing with fire with the database and you want to make sure you have a good structural copy to go back to. You're not worried about the data per se. This may be incredibly helpful for you. Also, it's fast. So you can create them when you need to, and it's not going to slow the server down. It's not a full backup process, etc.
Yeah. So a couple things that are going on. And so I want to point a note out on this is, as a general rule, when we're talking about features here in FileMaker Pro or FileMaker Server or FileMaker Go, they're generally going to be replicated over to the Claris equivalent product. Immediately, anything that has to do with OAuth or third-party identity, identity providers, that stuff has not really been set up in Claris Server yet. So this first item here is not a Claris Server item at all. And this is the idea that we had. You can, when you go to websites, say, would you like to log in and just use your Google authentication or Amazon or Facebook or whatever. The new support mechanisms, you can log in with Apple ID. Your Apple ID is now supported in the FileMaker server. And we can look at this briefly. I'm not going to really demonstrate it, but we'll show it to you. It's in there's just another option. So now we have a local Active Directory server. You can authenticate with that if it's local on your network. Then you have Active Directory Azure, the online Active Directory. My company uses that. I'm not a giant Microsoft fan, but that Active Directory offering, A, it's free for what we use it for, and B, it does groups and things like that. It's pretty good. I really like Active Directory, Azure Online Active Directory. That's pretty great. So this is an acronym that you need to be familiar with. It's SIWA. You'll see this kind of kicked around. Wim de Court dives into this stuff at a much deeper level if you want to dig under the hood with it. I mean, it's deep enough that I started to melt my head. I was like, hey, Jacob, have you seen this yet? Anyway, so terminology, SIWA is sign in with Apple support. And then the PKI is using public and private keys to log in, right?
Mm-hmm. Specifically to authenticate to the admin API. Yeah.
FileMaker Server Admin API. Yeah.
Yep.
It says FileMaker Admin API, but really the I would be, for clarity's sakes, I would put the word server right there. There's no admin for pro, right? So yeah.
And that lets you pull and update all kinds of settings on the server. Most everything that you can access through the admin console can be like you can fetch the status of it or the current settings and stuff like that. You can also update all of those settings. This includes a bunch of the like hidden, you'd think of them as like command line only features for the FileMaker server. Command line only settings were, for example, like there's the built-in backup schedule that runs once a day. It comes with FileMaker server, keeps 7 days. Nice Kermit the Frog with Claris logo. I like that.
All right, did we kill that one, PKI? Sorry about that, Chris or Jacob Taylor.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so there's a little link right here.
Explaining what you can do with the admin
yeah,
API.
If you want to read about some of this right here, I would read about that. Also, we put the link to Wim de Court's blog entry in there. It's not video, it's just text, but it's pretty solid. All right, so a couple other minor things that are going on. So restrict admin console access by IP address. So this is basically a whitelist. Everyone here should pretty much know what a blacklist is, a whitelist is. There's this thing, a gray list that's in between. But Claris implemented a whitelist for server login, okay? That's a nice thing to do. We do the same thing with our Amazon servers. So when we have Amazon servers set up that belong to RCC, no one could get to them unless they're coming as a security precaution from one of our approved addresses. And I think we also use a dongle token thingy, whatever. So very cool stuff. So that's one thing. The other one is this protect against unauthorized access. So the idea is that, and I don't know if this is one that's been around for a long time, because I always kind of hated this feature, but it's this file list filtering capability. And what Claris has done is they turned it on by default in the product. I will demonstrate that here momentarily, but it's this FLF thing. So you got SIWA, and then you got FLF and all sorts of new things to learn. There's a ton of security updates. We're going to, or not updates, but there's security updates and regular bug fixes in Pro and Server. We're going to dive into both of those here, and I'm going to have Jacob help me with that. David Angel says the whitelist. Yeah, I'm just going to clarify on the whitelist. I know it's a joke, David, but just to be clear, the whitelist is you're going to apply a IP address or something like that to the whitelist, and only a connection request from that whitelist is accepted for this FileMaker server administration. Right, does that make sense? So there's a ton of bug fixes in here. That's just the one screen that Mr. Douglas Wallace, the product manager at Claris, put in. There's actually a ton more. All right, cool. So let's take a look at some links here. Mr. Taylor, you want to start with server fixes and things, or you want to start with, what do you want to start with?
Sure. Yeah, either one works. Pro.
Here's Pro first. Pro release notes. Margaret, make sure you share these links with everyone.
Mhm.
So obviously there's this conversation. Let me zoom in a little bit more here. There's this conversation about transactions. I'm just going to skip that, but there are new script steps and some things in there. There's official support for Ventura, which is the new Mac OS, whatever for the Mac. Didn't they certify 19.5.4 for Ventura too? Wasn't that done?
No. No, people read it that way. The statement that they put out is that they were unaware of any compatibility problems, which does not mean that Ventura was supported. And so people went, oh, it's supported, and installed 19.5.4 on Ventura, or upgraded to Ventura with 19.5.4 installed, and found, I don't know what the bugs were, but there's some issues.
That's funny. Yeah. So
I don't think it was anything too bad. I know there was some pretty ugly or gnarly stuff around. Is it Stage Director? Some new feature with Ventura.
Yeah,
there's a couple notes at the bottom of this thing about that too, because it's like mostly supported now, but not.
Well, it's one of those things where if you, as an intermediate developer, you get to this mode where you pop a window off screen, deliberately hide it off screen, then you do a bunch of stuff. And if you saw that window on screen, it would flash, and you might get an epileptic fit from all the flashy stuff. So to keep it from looking trashy and having it looking more professional, we move the window off screen. But the Stage Manager, I think, feature in Ventura has issues with that. So we'll get to that. But all right, so we got sign in with Apple. That's the SI. Sign in with Apple, SIWA, right? Then new script steps, new set directory allows you to specify language and dictionary. I would give that to Nick Hunter, who speaks Greek. He's Greek national, French national, and American. He's got like triple passports. So I'd ask him to test that for us. Get transaction state is something about transaction. We'll deal with that tomorrow. Get current time, UTC, and microseconds. The one person that's probably going to be slobbering and loving this, I would guess, is Hansa, because he's always doing performance testing at 24U. So Hansa is a great guy in Europe, one of the European contributors to the community that does a lot. And one of his big things is doing performance testing. He does performance testing. There's supposed to be a lot of new server performance in 19.6 improvements. I have not tested those. I'm waiting for Hansa to kill himself, and once he has that, we will gladly steal the results and bring them to you. Actually, we'll have him come on the show. That'll be good. But yeah, it's a lot of work to do, serious, legit benchmark testing, and he's got a tool for that. Works pretty good. External D, we'll get to this one tomorrow. We'll get to these two tomorrow. They're mostly related to transactions. There's some library thing in here. Jacob, you want to say anything about this besides?
No, they updated the new versions. The OpenSSL one might be interesting, but I have to go look and see. There were pre-release issues that would be show-stopping, and I don't know if they've been fixed. I assume so. I just don't know.
All right, cool.
But mostly no. I don't think that's big. We could go look. I wouldn't do it on stream. We could go look and see if there's any interesting changes. Actually, the JSON one is probably the more interesting there, because that might include some, smoothing out of issues of FileMaker interacting with JSON, or a performance improvement or something like that. So
cool.
Maybe something interesting.
This one caused a lot of squealing with the last release. It was when you have the OAuth or Active Directory on screen, it doesn't show you your sign-on fields as well. Causes that icon I had where people were squirting water on everything, trying to put out the fire. This is a fire squirting moment where you're putting out. It's one of those deals where you build something in life, and it's kind of an unforced error. In baseball, they call it unforced error, where someone bangs a ball to you and you pick it up, then you just drop it because you're butterfingers. This one was the road to hell was paved with good intentions, and there were good intentions here. But when someone's doing Active Directory or outside OAuth provider, Sometimes you still want to log in with a username and password. You have to cancel the window, then ask someone how the hell to do that. Then they have to tell you to hold down the option key, right? And then that brings up your dialog so you can use your credentials. It's a lot of unnecessary hassle. So once again, that's a welcome fix. Context menus and interactive containers should be disabled. We'll have to play with that some. That's a Go thing. Interactive containers are a iOS capability. Preferences in tab. We have, okay, this is the big one right here. It's way down here. It's buried. It's like, hey, this is all super important stuff. This one little minor thing down here is going to save you all sorts of phone conversation with pissed off customers when their solution takes 10 minutes to start, right? Just press the button and then they'll be I tested it 2 days ago. Works great. Tools menu, some various other things. Oh, there's some add-on modules, fixes to the add-ons for FileMaker 19, right? My team, I have another group of engineers. One of them will be here tomorrow. Christian Olsen does the Wolfpack, the free Wolfpack tool. Margaret, if you want to put the links to the Wolfpack so they can download that, that'd be great. But there's some improvements into that, the add-ons, which is great. Very, very well received. Then there's a bunch of little bug things in here. A lot of these mean nothing to most of us, but there'll be a couple of you, like I was reading these to my engineers, and a couple engineers were giving each other high fives. I had no idea what they were talking about. They'd been bitten by a bug that was fixed in here, right? So they were very, very happy this thing was being fixed. But insert in URLs and cookies. Custom menu app contain more than 255 layouts. Weird things would happen. Insert from URL scripts with curl with the LDAP protocol, some tweaks in there. Rendering performance. I like these things. Address the issue. You have to read this sentence because it says this is a fragmented sentence, right? Sentence fragment right here. If you just read this by yourself, you're like, what? So you have to read it like this. Addressed issues with Windows then you read this, when rendering performance slower than when. So somehow 19 was slow and then they made it faster. I don't use a lot of Windows. Some of my team does. Script workspace, importing, there's some bugs there. FileMaker intermittently quits when dragging files out of web viewer. That's no bueno. Mac side using Command Z in the shortcut. Dialog boxes. FileMaker to quit unexpectedly. Awesome. Let's definitely fix that. Popover title sometimes missing when open on the first time. Keyboard shortcuts, keyboard non-US layouts, dragging, dropping, assisted install. Unexpected revert trial mode. That one's still confusing to me. I don't know. That's some sort of weird sorcery stuff in there. I don't get that one. But since I haven't run into it, it doesn't mean anything to me. It might mean something to you. Bunch of things here with Mac and Windows importing, trim functions that didn't behave the way they're supposed to. URL protocol prompted the request that the file should be added to the permitted host. Blah blah blah.
There's no host.
Yeah. If there's any ones in here that you want to mention out loud, Jacob Taylor, but it's every one of there is someone in here on this live stream for every one of these items. You've been bitten by this, and you're like, yes, whether you realize it or not, the issue you ran into has been fixed. Which I guess gets us to, and there's a pretty long list, right? Which brings us back to, and these are some known issues. We'll get to these momentarily, but people are going to promptly say, hey, Richard, I'm going to update my FileMaker server this afternoon to the 19.6.1. Jacob Taylor, what would be your advice to people about upgrading?
Let us know how it goes, because we're not advising our clients to do it on day one.
Of the server.
Yeah, of the server. You can test pro. That probably is less of an issue. And especially if you see something on this list that is biting you currently, that'll obviously be something that will be interesting to you because you'll look at it and go, oh, hey, maybe that works correctly in 19.6. But we are, specifically for the server, definitely advising people to hold off for the moment, just to see if people run into stuff. The release quality first day, issues have gone down and down and down over time with Claris, but we're still kind of waiting. We still want somebody else to try it first in general. Like I said, if there's a specific issue that the new version fixes for you and it doesn't look like it's going to cause other issues, you're going to make your own decision on this. But our general advice is, wait, see if there's lots of screaming, basically.
Because that does happen sometimes. And on the pro side, you can see I have multiple copies of Claris Pro. I got Claris Pro 20. I got Claris Pro 40. I'm hoping for a Claris Pro 60 someday. It'd be awesome. So the numbering is all gone bonkers on the Claris side, but I notice I have 6 different clients here installed, so I can run 19.61. If I find an unsavory problem, I can roll backwards to 19.54, which is a pretty good stable spot to be at. All right, cool. So then let's talk about Ventura issues real quick. Animation in the script workspace window may not be smooth. That's a known issue. Card windows may not display correctly after being minimized or restored when using, that's that Stage Manager. So if you're doing FileMaker and you're playing with Stage Manager, my general recommendation is turn off Stage Manager for now. Okay, just turn it off. I'm not sure. I personally use about 8 or 9 Macs, and I've got Ventura on 2 of them to kind of like stick my finger in there to see if it burns my finger. But I don't think I'm using Stage Manager. When printing, the current record option is ignored. Pages, the pages option is used instead. Okay, fix that.
Print changes, yeah.
With transactions, aggregate functions like list and count don't have access to records modified when the transaction, within the transaction, only provide information. So I'm not sure what that's about, why that would be an OS specific thing, but there's something in there. So let's talk about the minimum operating systems real quick. So 19.6, it will auto update to anything from 19.0 or newer on that on Windows, and then the Mac one only updates, that's on Windows, on the Mac one only updates 19.5. So that's interesting. There's a Claris has a website here. These are the requirements for all the versions. So 19.6.1, so 10. So yeah, Ventura, Monterey, Big Sur, Catalina. Catalina is the last one for a lot of the 2014 Macs. If you got a 2014 Mac, you'll be able to use 19.6. Someday, I know Claris has started on 19.7. I don't know anything about it besides it exists. But I would imagine they would drop Catalina support at that point. I'm just guessing, but it would make sense. 19.5.4. Here's the official supported versions here. On Windows side, keep in mind it's Windows 11, Windows 10.
There is a thing to call out actually there that is specific.
I thought it was Windows 8 too. Wasn't that in? I think didn't Doug?
They dropped that at some point. No, the thing I would like to call out here is that they say specifically Enterprise and Pro editions. A thing that has bit several customers recently is they tried to put Pro on their Windows Home Edition laptop and had problems because Windows Home Edition does not include or support some functionality, I don't know, but something that Pro needs. So
okay, yeah. So don't be a homie and have home version of your Windows operating system.
Yeah, the installer doesn't throw a fit, which is why you might be surprised by that.
Okay. It doesn't throw a fit. It says, "Hey, go for it."
Yep. Yeah, it installs and then doesn't work perfectly.
The installer says, "Hold my beer. I'm going to go for it." Right? I love it. All right, cool. So that is the Pro release. This is the operating system requirements for. If you want to see the server operating requirements, I guess we just cover this perfunctorily here. So server, this is actually kind of an important one here. I'll start at the bottom. So with 19.6, with 19.5, you could use Ubuntu 18.04. That's long-term support. That's the one you want to use. It's always the 04 one that's the long-term support one. Long-term support means that they're going to support it like with security patches and stuff for like 5 or 6 or 8 years or whatever the number is, some big long period of time. And so recently there's been the 2004 release. And so Claris decided to dump the 1804 because 2004 was sufficiently mature and modern. So they're supporting that. And then there's this desktop version. It's compatible with server, but it has not been fully tested. So you should use the server version. If you want the desktop version, we say in the business, your mileage may vary, right? So if you use ethanol gas in your high performance Lamborghini car, your mileage may vary. It may just explode the engine. Who knows? So here it is.
So the big thing on this screen is that 19.6 does not support Windows Server 2016, which is
what. There it is, right there. See that? There it is.
But it adds support for 2022, which people have been demanding from me for about 9 months now because Microsoft stopped allowing their resellers to do unless you order off menu or whatever, but stopped allowing their resellers to do Server 2019 licensing. So none of this matters like if you're in Amazon or something like that, because you'll just get whatever like we give you, or if you have a cloud provider or something like that, they'll handle that for you. But if you're like an on-site server host for your FileMaker server, then this will be very relevant to you.
Margaret, questions. There's quite an active conversation going on Discord over here.
Yeah, the last question was, what's the last most stable version of FM server?
19.5.4. Did I get that right, Jacob? Did I get it right?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
The last stable version of FileMaker server.
Yes, 19.5.4, correct.
It's the stable spot. We always talk about the analogy or the idea that you're stepping across. For those of you who've only lived in the city, I can't help you with this. But if you ever go out in the countryside or in the mountains somewhere, and there's a creek with water in it, and there'll be little stones in it, as you're walking across the creek, you want to step from stone to stone and make sure that if you stop, you're on a stone that's not shifting and shaking. You want a stone that's stable platform for you. That's the analogy we use with servers, etc. You want to make sure that you get onto a stable release. So early versions of 19.5 were kind of sketchy, I think, but 19.5.4 server is a good stable spot to stand on that rock and just sit there and don't move, right?
I haven't had too many issues with it. If you want old stable, like no new features, 19.4, we've had essentially no problems with it. There's like 3 known, and it's like there's like a specific WebDirect issue or something like that. If you don't use WebDirect, doesn't matter, stuff like that. 19.5 though, for the customers that have it of ours, I haven't run into any issues. Basically, there are things that are not like the software crashing that are problems. They, for example, stripped out support for all the old PHP stuff. So if you have PHP files and stuff that talk to a FileMaker server 19.5, they'll probably end up located on a different machine, basically, stuff like that. But as far as stability or stuff like that, nah, that seems to work fine.
Okay, cool. I'm going to go to the server release notes right now. So, Margaret, if you want to drop that in there too. So, this is the 19.6.1 server release notes. Once again, there's a ton of stuff in here. I'm just going to loosely go through it. It says that FileMaker server supports installation of Ventura. Okay. I think if you're running between a brand new operating system and a brand new version of FileMaker server, you're definitely in the deep end of the pool being circled by sharks. I would
pick only one of those to be the newest.
Yeah, if you want to have one new amazing thing, do
and
one.
Very specifically, it should be the FileMaker that should be newer. Just to be clear.
Yeah. So that's a lot of, it's literally like, it's like, oh, you dove deep into the pool with sharks circling you, and you're 5 beers drunk, right? So that kind of thing. Then it doesn't end well for anyone involved. Updated libraries. I don't know JS, right? There you go.
Yeah. Node runs admin console, DAPI, admin API, OData. So upgrades there are good. I don't know what they help us with, but they're good.
Do you want to show FileMaker server real quick, Jacob?
Sure.
Because there's this clone only feature that's kind of I think it's big. I think it's being pushed by, if I had to guess, by the Proof Guys people with the automatic app they have, which is similar to the deploy application from 360works. As a tool that allows you to have a new update of your software and then just send it to that, and it goes to the server, takes the live one down, it moves the data over and puts the new one up. It does it all pretty speedy. One of the things they need to be able to just kick out a clone, right? So
yeah, I'm thinking of what was that? Someone tried to build a DevOps platform around this, and so I think that would be incredibly helpful for somebody like
Devin
that.
Or Berkeley, okay, I just got
we got micro. Yeah.
I got infinite Jacobs there.
How about that? Do we have fewer Jacobs? Do we have
Jacobs?
We have the correct number of them.
So Larry, we have a good question. What is a clone? A clone is you take your I'm going to say FMP12 file or .claris file. It's your database file, and it strips all the data out of it. So all the found sets are 0 on every table. It's not a negotiation. There's no options to it. It's all or nothing. It also does some therapeutic resetting of the file. It cleans up a bunch of things. The cloning, whenever we talk about databases that start malfunctioning or doing weird stuff, we always talk about, hey, we're going to recover the file. We're going to do this to that. Cloning is an option to try to, reset, not just remove the records, but also resets a lot of the underlying structure of the file. It's a very, very helpful tool. So it's your database. So all the layouts, all the scripts, all the coding, all the calculations, everything minus the user data. No user data. Okay.
None.
All right. Cool. All right. This is 19.6.1 on Amazon, running on a T3 large on Linux. Yes?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. So it largely is the same. There are a couple little areas that things are better, different, improved.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
see our little hosted databases here. None of that stuff changed.
Yep. None of that. Backups, you can get, go to backups. Is it?
Which one do you want? So the thing that's changed here, if you are not keeping up with FileMaker Server, basically, is this backup settings tab. That would be wholly new to probably most people here.
Okay.
If you've not been in here before, they've added this tab so that you have quick access to the settings for progressives.
This is much better. I have not seen this. This is much better.
Yep. And
Before
then
really stupid. Yeah.
The new parallel backups feature also has its toggle over here. That's a 19.5 feature. There's an improvement in the changelog for 19.6 with parallel backups as well. But yeah. So you have a couple settings here. This says change. It just takes you to the configuration, but it puts you on the folders tab, which lets you do
so they didn't really move it.
They
just yeah. It's one of those things that belongs in two spots. All right, go back to backup. So that's fine. So you got backups. Yep. Do backup schedules. Add a backup schedule. I think this is where we can see this. Create a schedule. This is where we set our own schedule up. Create a schedule.
Somebody delete it? I thought I added an hourly. Well, I did not. All right, cool. We can add an hourly.
Yeah, and don't leave this screen because we want to look at some of the options here. So we could back up all databases. They can go to a specific folder. Down below, you can do these extra items. So verify actually runs I think a compression or a verification on the file. If you have a big file, it could take, if a backup took you a minute, the verify could take you an hour and a half real easily. The clone makes a full backup and then it makes a clone, right? So we discussed a clone is this file, like, I can't really demo it here, but it's a structure of the file only, no data, okay? That's what that does. The clone only doesn't make a full backup. It just actually kicks out a clone.
Just a clone.
Once again, some people do this and use this, and it's kind of, I guess, an extra backup. I have never really essentially used it, but if you have a tool like the automatic backup from Proofgeist or 360 Works' product, which we use quite a bit, so I can vouch for that one for sure, is called Deploy from Jesse Barnum. That tool, you grab a new version of your file, upload it, press a button, and it just magically pushes itself to the server or to a whole bunch of servers. If you have more than one server, it's really quite great.
Yep. You can use it for mass deploy. So if you have like a vertical market app or something like that, and so each client, your client, not our client, your client has, they have an app hosted on a server somewhere, and you've split them out somehow, and you've developed a new feature that everybody's going to get, right? Yeah. You take your development copy, it gets cloned out, and then you can push that clone out to all with that feature in it, right? Out to all of those customer databases.
Yeah, we bought this
kind of
tool
at the same time.
Some of our customers have bought that 360 deploy tool. That's what that does. So I think it's going to leverage that.
Works pretty well. Yeah.
All right, what else we got?
So we did that. We did backup settings.
Administration. We got the Apple sign-in thingy, right? Where's that?
Nothing too much interesting here. None of this stuff has really changed actually recently. Connectors, you got OData, that's recent. It runs on all platforms now. Used to be Linux only, I think, and now I think it was 19.5.
They did add XML in here, the XML gateway into this, onto the Linux version.
On Linux, yeah, Linux does XML now. So same as before, you're probably going to host your, say, PHP or whatever you're using to talk to the XML API. You probably host that on a different machine, but it's on Linux now. We have full support for it. So
Yeah, for those of you, and I was this way, wanted to run FileMaker server and your Apache, whatever web server, now it's called Nginx on it, on the one machine. And I have people who insist upon doing that. It causes all sorts of configuration nightmares for you. So you really need to run a 2-machine configuration. One is your web server with your web pages, etc. The other server is your FileMaker / Claris server.
Yep. Highly recommend if you currently do a bunch of stuff where I'll say PHP, but it could be any web programming language, but you've got your code talking to FileMaker server like that, even if it's the data API, doesn't matter. And you're not in a split machine configuration where you have a web server and a database server, and those are 2 different servers. You should pursue that split. Move in that direction over time. Yeah.
David Angel just had he wanted to make sure he heard me correctly. So there's clone, there's verify, go to the backups real quick. One more time, we're just gonna say this. So I'm gonna cover these 3. These are all really good test certification questions. So without any of those checked, you're going to get a backup of the current
file.
Say the word file. I just had to put $100 in the swear jar. FileMaker file. And you're going to get a copy of the current FileMaker file. If you do verify, you'll get a copy of the FileMaker file that has had a review on it, a consistency review of it, right? Then if you press the clone, you're going to get the basic copy, and you're going to get a clone. So really, the clone's a twofer, right? Everything's a twofer, right? And then the clone only is a 1-for. You only get the clone, right? So that, yeah. So
yep.
There you go. All right. Where is the Apple?
That's going to be, so we have new stuff here. Administration tab is the new one. So FileMaker licensing, you see here, this hasn't changed. That all the buttons and everything that's shown here is the same. Administrator, this is slightly different. The bottom section here is the big difference. So you have your admin, your global administrator, everything in the admin console, can edit, touch, mess with, view any and all settings for anything. You can add a public key now. And so this does not use a username and password. It uses your public key to authenticate. Again, this is mostly for that.
Can you still use it? You can still use a username and password, or you can use a public key, or is it only?
Correct. They're additional. So the public key is useful because, for example, if what you are doing is having automated processes talk to the FileMaker server, you actually would like to avoid using username and password, generally speaking, because you have to store that username and password somewhere. Keys can be stored safely, not like, because we're not talking about a situation where you have like a credential manager, so like your Apple keychain, or I don't know what the one is on Windows. I apologize. I don't know what it's called, but you save your password for FileMaker. You're going to go log into your database, and they let you, and you say save this in my keychain.
I forgot what they call that.
Yeah, so you can do that. That is not possible for things where it's not FileMaker. There's not, we're not talking about FileMaker at all, and it's talking to your FileMaker server to either get information about it, update settings, check on stuff, force a clone. You've got a Python script that comes in and does a clone or something, triggers it on certain circumstances or something like that. Whatever you might be doing, it is a better practice to use a key for that instead of the username and password.
By the way, I want to do a shout out. You said the word Python, and I was reading that's part of that Wim DeCourt's blog, but he was very specific about recommending you don't install Python on your FileMaker server. And I think this goes back to his and Chris Moyer's conversation about vectors of attack for ransomware
system security. Correct.
Yeah. So the more, how am I going to say this? The more crap you put on your FileMaker server, the bad guys can use to get into it. Not good, right? So Python. So Wim was very much like, if you don't have to install it, run the Python somewhere else, kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, we've had a couple customers that wanted like, hey, like, what do you guys install on the server? What kind of, crazy wild monitoring and third-party libraries and, whatever, right? Like they want a kind of an inventory of our FileMaker servers. And to be honest, there's like 5 things installed. And so it's a very short list actually. But that is one of the things that reduces an attack surface for a server, having less stuff on there. Because if you get onto a server, but you can't see because it's like some kind of software exploit, and you don't have Python or some other programming language available, they have much less movement room. They're still on your system right now, and that may be suboptimal, but if you give them fewer options to be successful at jacking your data or whatever they're trying to do, that's an upside. In any case, next feature, the restrict access. You were calling this the whitelist. We usually call those allow lists, and it is because what this does is it enables a list of people who are allowed to log into the admin console, and that's IP addresses. But if you, for example, we're going to do like LAN IPs, you've got your FileMaker server, it's an on-site conversation. You could like put the IT admin's address in, or like he's the only one that's allowed to do that. Cool stuff like that.
Hey, I have a question. Did we ever do a presentation on zero tier? I don't think we did.
Nope.
We need to do that. Then you'll see the super secret sauce that we use at RCC.
Yep.
All right, cool. There is a question from DeCinco on here. He says, does the public key, the public-private key stuff work for ODBC connections into
admin API?
So the admin API is not an ODBC connection. Admin API is where you basically do a curl call from a client that tells the file. Remember, and this gets back to me waving my hands around, but Margaret, if you want to make us a little bigger, that's fine. So when you access your FileMaker server, there are 3 methods for accessing the FileMaker server. There is the web interface. There are curl commands that you can call, which is called the admin API. There's also command line interface. There's 3 things you can do. One of course, it comes up in certification testing, is that these 3 ways of interacting with your server are not all-inclusive or unique to each other, etc. Some features that you can do, like opening or closing a database, I don't even know if that's a good example, but it only works on maybe 2 of the 3 processes, right? You can't do, like, for example, if you're going to change the RAM cache on the FileMaker server, how much of the RAM of the server is used to keep the database in RAM memory? The question with that is, can you do that with a command line? Yes or no? Can you do that with an admin API? Yes or no? Can you do that with the web interface? What we're looking at right now is only the web interface, right? So just keep that in mind.
Yep.
So the admin, this public-private key is adding a level of security to one of those 3 methods. If that makes sense. Okay.
Yep. This is the administrator roles interface. I think this is somewhat similar, maybe a newer and improved version of the old admin groups thing.
Yeah.
From 16 and earlier that got stripped, and then
that was before you came to work for us, and before you knew
yes.
So back. So this is like that. If you go watch a fun set of movies, it's Back to the Future with Michael J. Fox, I guess, or whatever, right? And he goes Back to the Future, and then everything old is new and new is old, whatever. And so what this is back in FileMaker 16, we had this ability where you could create a credential that would allow someone to log into the web interface only. So once again, we talked about the 3 ways of accessing the FileMaker server or Claris server. And those 3 methods are web browser, admin API, command line. So what you can do is if your users, you can give them a credential, username and password, so they can get into this interface that you see right here. And when they get in here, then you can allow them to manage their own databases. So the idea is that you have an organization, a bigger organization, and you have a sales team and a marketing team and an engineering team, and they're all on the same FileMaker server, which may or may not even be a good idea, but say they're all on the same server because you bought a big server. Then you could give the engineering people access to their files, and you give the salespeople access to their files, because if the engineers knew that the salespeople could access administration of their files, they would freak out, right? You just understand how that is, right? So you have different groups administering their own files. Makes perfect sense. And so that's what this is designed to do. We've demonstrated this, played with this, and then it was removed. A lot of internal intrigue and politics and, frankly, shenanigans and bad behavior within the ranks at the time. This goes way back many years ago. The guy who did this, he lit this shit on fire, then he quit Claris and went to work for Salesforce of all things. So, not good. And so Claris came back and put this back in. So yeah, it's one of those kind of things. It's like, yeah, we could do anything you want on your last day at work, right? So anyway, so they put this feature back in the product. It's nice to have. Obviously, some customers really need that ability to let people administer their own set of databases. So they don't have access to the entire server. They just have access to their sales files, their engineering files, that kind of thing. Pretty straightforward. So question. Yep. So this gets back to, there's this conversation on Discord because with the smarty pants, the operation, who's my frog lover, Ruben, says question. So doesn't Python, or Jim says, isn't Python installed by default on Ubuntu, right? Sure. And so my guess is that WimDecourt tells people to deinstall Python. I think in this case, we're probably talking about Windows installation. I don't know, is Python a standard install on Windows?
No.
Okay, so it's probably Wim talking about probably about Windows. In this case,
yeah, it's don't go install a bunch of extra stuff. That's the advice. And then separately, the generic version of the conversation is separation of concerns. So if your web code, for example, is in Python, you get a Python-based website or an API endpoint or whatever, right? You have some code running, and maybe it talks to FileMaker for some of its functionality. Put that somewhere that's not the FileMaker server, please and thank you. That's the conversation. And so, because what that means is if they, you have a vulnerability in your Python thing, they hack into that, they get that server. That sucks, sorry. But they don't necessarily get the FileMaker server, right?
Yeah, which is worth a lot more between you and me and the wall. Yeah.
Yep. So
here's your Apple, sign in with Apple, SIWA, sign in with Apple right here. So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So there's a lot of little things here, a lot of bug fixes. I think that for most people, this is, you can definitely download and play with Pro now, use Pro. You shouldn't have any problem with it. You can still actually connect your if you have the latest update to FileMaker 18, because some of you are going to ask this question, and you want to use Pro 18 to connect to your 19 server and vice versa. I think that works.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, generally speaking, stop using 18. It hasn't been supported in a year.
Oh,
I have to put that out there. It was last summer. I don't mean 3 months ago. I mean a year ago, a year and 3 months ago. Yeah. That support was ended. End of July 2021.
Yep.
So it's if there are, I'll put it this way: if there's a good reason that you haven't upgraded yet, i.e., there are bugs in the product, feature blockers, something where you evaluated and you're correct that you shouldn't be on 19 yet, frankly, please file those with Claris immediately and without delay, because you should get up on 19. It's way better, but right. We're on an active development platform now, and so there are the occasional sharp edges. Those get resolved, actually, which is great to be able to say. So,
all right, cool. Well, we're wrapping up the hour here. I want to remind everyone that tomorrow is going to be a deep dive, or I don't know, for beginners and intermediates on transactions. Christian Olson will be here with me tomorrow. Jacob, if you want to be here as well, that'll be fun. It'll be more about building transactions into the solution, or maybe where those fit. We're going to play with some of the bits and pieces of that. Some of you want really advanced conversation about transactions. Tomorrow's not going to be that. It's going to be the basics, right? Watching transactions where where you test them and you fail them because they don't pass your certification process to commit, right? Remember, there's a begin the transaction, there's the commit at the end. FileMaker can abort them itself because it runs into something unsavory, or you decide to abort it yourself because some condition exists, right? So, very, very important. So yeah, anything else? So Jim Watt says, so Jacob was meaning if you don't need a certain software package and it's not default on the server, don't install it. Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Correct. Yep.
Right. Because everything you install is and say that company has some sort of little, vulnerability in there that some jackass hacker figures out. And then so he might be able to use that to exploit your stuff, right?
It's not like a big deal. It's just you try to gather all the things together, so you have a FileMaker server that's got, that comes with certain pieces of software from Claris that enable you to do whatever it is. it's kind of the same conversation. Don't turn on WebDirect if you're not using it, right? There's a whole set of processes on the server that separately from, I don't know, using CPU or RAM or something like that. If you're not going to use it, there's no reason to turn it on. So don't.
Yeah.
Same thing with random third-party packages. Maybe you used it, maybe you didn't. Maybe it's an active use or not. But if you don't need it on the server, take it off.
Okay.
Because it, yeah.
Yeah. So once again, but if it was part of the default installed by FileMaker, you want to probably leave it in there. I wouldn't remove anything that it installs.
Yeah.
Maybe not turn it on.
Yeah, you may find yourself, I think one of my favorite customers, so they had it's very old, a quick story, I'll tell it and then we can be done. But I had a customer come up, just things were misbehaving, right? They couldn't, there was something funky with the FileMaker server. They couldn't figure out what it is. I go in and look at it. I'm like, this is weird. I don't know. The server looked headless. Like you didn't have the admin console control over the software. And it's like, okay. So we timed it. We shut the server down, did all this stuff, reboot the machine itself. Maybe there's some kind of latent issue. It's been running too long, something like that. Get it up on the other side. Nothing. FileMaker won't start it on. I'm like, did I just kill this customer server? No. So one of the wonderful enterprising IT people on their end had seen an ancient copy of Java, which this was a FileMaker Server 16 era. So it had the old Oracle Java, installer that came in with the auto updater and all that kind of stuff. So he saw this ancient copy of Java 8 installed on the server and went, oh, that's bad. We should get rid of that, and got rid of it. Well, you may be familiar, Java back then ran the whole admin console. And so there was a bunch of core stuff that didn't work anymore. Reinstalled Java, everything boots right up. So.
Yeah, well, Ruben goes, well, that's you got to love Oracle and Java. Well, I would also say you got to love IT people who, stick their fingers in the circuitry.
They were probably trying to do something smart, make the server more secure. I cannot fault it. Also, it completely destroyed the FileMaker server.
Well, there you go. Two sides of the very dangerous coin. All right, cool. Well, we're a little past the hour. I want to appreciate everyone for coming here. Jacob, if you quit sharing briefly for me, that would be great. So that's Jacob Taylor, and I want to point out the resources once again that we have. Margaret's posted them. We've got various links for the Pro release notes for 19.6.1, server release notes 19.6.1. If you want to play with Pro 19 or Go 19.6.1, feel free. If you're going to install FileMaker Server 19.6.1 and it melts, don't call me. Okay. We want to let people who just have nothing to do in their lives and they're bored and they're personally unfulfilled and they feel that installing Server 19.6.1 will fulfill their lives. Those of you do that, please let us know how it goes. That would be great. Looking forward to that. And then tomorrow is going to be tomorrow is really going to be awesome. Unless you are Todd Geis, Josh Orman, Wim DeCourt, Chris Moyer, David Knight, all the normal people, like those super duper gnarly code monkeys that are out there. Jeremy Brown, Jeremy Bonte, all these folks. All those people, those people should not come to Livestream tomorrow. But if you are played with transactions, you thought about transactions, you saw Todd's presentation on how to, or John Sindelar's presentation on how to do transactions, which is super ugly and super hacky and super nasty. I mean, as Nick Hunter would say, it's nasty with that. So it's much simpler now in 19.6. We're going to show that to you tomorrow. We're going to walk you through it and answer your questions. So until then, catch you later. Got a report of an individual up here who maybe a FileMaker license
Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir.
On the ground, give me your hands.
And we're out.
Yeah.
I don't
Keep that video privated because I briefly showed that screenshot, and I want to make sure that that didn't have anything important on it.
I don't think it did. That was the one in our DM.
Yeah, let me see here. I'm looking
That
for
is
usernames and passwords.
no, it doesn't have anything in it. No, it is the live server, the test one that we're using, but no, there's no credentials on screen at all.
Okay, good. Okay, it popped up. I'm like, God, did I just fuck myself?
Hosting database. Yeah. No, no, I kept that one clean just in case.
Good idea. Smart man. I promptly walked into your trap. That one's pretty good, don't you think?
Oh, so all right, we're done. Stream is ended.
Yeah,
Cool.
we're done.
Let me share my screen. Come here.
Okay.
Give me a screen share.
Okay.
I'm gonna show you two something that you're gonna cackle about. Okay, so this was on screen before. Participants can see my screen. Great,
Yes.
thank you. So this is the server that you're on. Probably not up to date. So let's see. The databases should be open. Just give me 2 seconds here. Dun, 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 dun. Thinking. And then, all right, so all the item statuses are open, and I don't think there's anybody on them, hopefully. No one's connected to these databases. Cool, so watch. Okay, so I click that, yeah.
Mhm.
Oh shit!
Wait for it. They're closing. There it goes. Okay.
Nice.
So with one button, you can shut down all of the servers.
Well,
This is a file close request.
that's a file. It's emergency. Yeah, you
It is
should, can you clean that button up and say, not it doesn't
emergency.
kill the server, it kills it closes emergency
I know.
file.
I'm the only
Emergency
one that can
close all
see the
files.
button, Richard.
Ah.
I am the only one that can see the button. My button is JT's button. So yeah, this was a thing that I've been wanting for a while, and I tested it on this server and then got the code working correctly because I was very close but not quite there. JSON was formatted not quite perfectly, but
right.
yeah, so you can do this.
Okay. That's nice. I like that. All right. Well, I'm going to let
do
you
the
go,
opposite
Mr. Taylor.
too.
I'm going to work on, I got to retrieve a machine from Santa Clara and then God knows whatever else. And then I need to work on tomorrow's presentation. Yes. Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
I'm going to work on the presentation for tomorrow, the transactions of the demos. Yes.
I'm gonna no. I have to. I don't know what we're gonna do here.
Do what? What are you talking about?
I'm just thinking about because we're still on 19.4. At some point we go to 5 or 6, and I don't know which. And
I'd let 6 settle out and do 6.
Yeah, 4's been good. 5 I want. Well, 5 or later. That's because we inherit those changes. So there's not the sorting. It's the other one.
Yeah.
That they added, the other server offload crap. Anyway, so I don't know. I don't know if 19.6 is going to be fast or not, but that'll be exciting when we get there.
Oh, it's supposed to. They said 600 simultaneous WebDirect connections, no problem.
Ooh, nice.
And I'm like, that must.
Is that must be the undercarriage work they were doing in WebDirect?
Yeah.
They were pre-staging that they were going to start turning the numbers up, and then we heard, FileMaker server and it's like, well, at some point you get your record locking ironed quite far enough out that you'll actually be able to bump that 500.
We could put 19.6 on my box if we wanted to.
Oh, yeah, you should try it. I mean, I don't see a downside.
I mean, I use it so lightly in terms of features that,
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is I don't think you'll have a huge issue, especially if this is a new machine that you're.
Yeah,
it's a fresh install, if you will. Yeah.
A fresh M1. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go for now, Jacob Taylor. Good job. Yes.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, sir.
Good job, Margaret. Thank you.
Yep, not a problem. Bye.